All right, and welcome back for week 6. Awesome job on your exams last week. Good job getting in those blogs. So with those makeup blogs, whenever there's an M next to it, you don't have to do it, and you will get a 0 if you don't do it. But remember, they'll come in place for ones that you may have missed, or if you got a low score on one, they'll come in for that. So you don't have to do it, but great job if you did. Loved reading about the good teachers and the not so good teachers, and hopefully this class is one that you will enjoy. And with that, let's move into this chapter. So we're in our next mod. We're talking all about emotional development, feelings, and just how we grow as a person emotionally. So today's chapter is chapter 5, and it's all about thoughts and feelings. So let's jump right in. So in this chapter, we're going to be talking about feelings, whether they're positive or negative, physiological responses, like what happens in our body when we feel certain feelings, some different cognitions that can elicit those changes, as well as some goals and desires around taking action with our feelings. So we have primary emotions, also called basic emotions, and these have a biological origin. They are there from birth. Basically, in the first year, we see this stuff happen. And then this is things like fear, joy, disgust, surprise, all of these new beginning emotions. And then we have complex or secondary or self-conscious emotions. So these are more, we need a sense of self, so they can't happen immediately. They require an understanding of rules and standards. So this would be something like embarrassment, shame, or guilt. Our feelings are, from a biological perspective, innate and universal. So facial expressions of the basic emotions are the same across cultures. All infants begin to smile at about 46 weeks post-conception, regardless of how long they've been exposed to smiling faces. This is rooted in some human evolution. Distress elicits caregiving and promotes survival. So if I'm crying, people are going to be like, what's going on? They're going to come take care of me. And that's where those expressions start to come from. When we look at feelings from a learning perspective, we can think about kind of conditioned responses. So when I smile, my parents give me positive attention, and so my smiling will increase. Same thing with fear. If the first doctor's visit was really traumatic, ouch, I got a shot, it hurt, I was crying, then I'm going to learn this fear of the doctor's office, okay? Also from a learning perspective, if we're observing it, if my mother is afraid of spiders and I see that, I'm going to learn that fear of spiders. From a functionalist perspective, what specific emotions emerge at certain ages really has a certain function. So we want to establish, maintain, or change our relationship with the environment to really achieve our goal. It's helpful to interact with people because they help keep you alive as a baby, and so that's the function of that behavior. All right, let's break down primary emotions a little bit more. So the first emotions that are present at birth are disgust, distress, contentment, and interest. We have a really basic smile, and we have mostly reflexive responses to change in our biological state. Around 2 to 7 months, anger and sadness start to happen. So these increase with age, and really we start to recognize we have control over our environment, but that control is often threatened. A social smile really comes out at around 2 to 3 months, and this is just directed towards people and interactions and increasing our interactions. Surprise and joy come up next, and fear is really the last basic emotion, and it appears around 7 months. We have 2 primary fears, and those are separation from our caregiver and strangers. So complex emotions happen next, and this is about 2.5 years old, and these are really dependent on a sense of self and cognitive skills, hence them developing earlier. Embarrassment is one of the first things to typically appear, and then pride, shame, and things like that start to come up a little bit later. Normally in the early childhood years through mid-elementary is when these things start to come up. We see our peers looking at us, our teachers looking at us. That can cause the guilt or the shame or the embarrassment. Your book does talk about some differences between males and females with their emotional expression. In infancy, we see that males' expression is more frequent and really more intense than females. after infancy, that switches. We see females with the higher emotional expressivity. Let's talk a little about social referencing. So really what this looks like is using others' emotional expressions to figure out how to respond to a situation we might not know about. So this is kind of like modeling, but we're reading the room, we're understanding what other people's faces are doing and trying to figure out what our own reaction should be. So at about a year old, we use this to guide our own reaction. So fall down, and before we react, we look at our parent. And if they're fearful or upset, we will start to get upset. At about 2, we use it to confirm appropriateness of our own reaction. So we'll look to others after we react and determine, was this the right response? So I fall down, I jump up and say, I'm okay, right? I look at my mom. Another part of emotional understanding is the emotional scripts. And you might even do this as an adult, and it's really working through and practicing how would I respond in this situation. Call it like role playing. And so with kids, we think about, okay, in the story, how do you think the character's feeling? Oh, he's so sad. Why do you think he's sad? Well, he's sad because he lost his favorite toy. And we're working through some hypothetical situations to understand what would be appropriate or not so appropriate responses to a certain situation. All right, let's jump into the topic of emotional regulation. This means how do we manage our feelings? Sure, it's okay to be angry and sad and frustrated, but it's not okay to lay on the floor and cry every day, all day. It's not okay to be so angry that we punch something and break it. And so we want to learn how to regulate our emotions. A lot of different ways to do this. Maybe with the kids you've worked with, you've seen some great ideas from modeling to social emotional curriculums. But let's talk a little about emotional regulation in context of your book. So in infancy, we're seeing primarily behavioral strategies. So this would be like you're crying and your father picks you up, or your mom rocks you when you're fearful. We see things like sucking behaviors like a thumb or a pacifier, and also gaze aversion. So turn our head to look away from someone who's trying to make a face at us or get a laugh out of us. Once language development starts to happen, we have a little bit more skills and things that we can do, but right now we're just behavioral. Once we have some cognitive development, we can have some better skills for regulation as well, and they can be internal. So we can do cognitive distraction, like thinking about something else. Think about the swimming pool instead of the toy that I lost. We can do some positive cognitive restructuring, which is really just looking at things a different way. So thinking about, wow, this was a really valuable experience I learned, even though I lost. As we develop cognitively, we start to understand that there's this connection between our regulation efforts and the changes in our feelings. We stop being so rigid and become a little bit more flexible, and we start to cope a lot better. You can feel angry, but don't express it. Whenever I express it, I get in trouble. Express it inappropriately. Another part of this chapter is display rules, and this governs what, when, why we express certain emotions. These can be culturally specific. So joy is probably inappropriate to express at a funeral in some cultures, whereas sadness might be inappropriate to express in others. The disappointing gift paradigm comes into play here. And so this is the display rule that it's inappropriate to show disappointment, sadness, or anger when a gift is given, and instead we need to show happiness. And I have a little example in here of a 4-year-old opening a present, and they're like, wow, it's exactly what I wanted. Their mom says, what is it? And the child says, I don't know. But it's this idea that we have to not show inappropriate responses to other people. So emotional competency is another part of this chapter. There's 3 components. There's expressivity, knowledge, and regulation. When we look at how we grow our emotional competency, emotion coaching is one way. So being aware of our child's emotions, recognizing emotional expression as an opportunity, listening empathetically and validating our child's feelings, and really helping with the labeling of those emotions. Okay? These are great ways to teach social competency as well as emotional regulation. I'm a big fan of reminiscing about past shared emotional experiences and even modeling and giving our child a chance to help us solve, oh my gosh, I had such a tough day at work. Someone was so rude to me. I got so angry. What could I do? and having your child have an opportunity to help you with that intervention. So I think that's all I want to talk about. The sun is rising. It's beautiful outside. It's going to be a great day and then get freezing on Monday and Tuesday. So keep up the great work. This week, all you have is a blog that's due. Great job.
I wish it was just another day, another